Welcome to the second episode of Book Brothers. I'm Michael Zubel.
And I'm Tom Zubel.
And we are here at Zubel Books, 2969 West 25th Street in beautiful Cleveland, Ohio, 44113. Today on Book Brothers, we'll be making a few corrections from our first podcast, and then we'll be talking about the phenomenon, the bane of bookselling, the thing called bookjackers. And then in our book hauls section, Tom will be talking about his recent trip to Los Angeles. First, a few corrections from our last episode. Point of fact, Thomas mentioned Howard Johnson as a periodicals dealer in the 1970s and 80s when, in fact, the man's name was Walter Johnson. And secondly, we were talking about our parents, and when they met, they did not go to a dance together. In fact, our mother and father met at a dance in the Bronx in the 1950s.
We got a lot of emails about those 2 points, and so we figured we better just get that out of the way and people stop hassling us about that.
So it's all cleared up now, and we'll move ahead.
All right. We want to start, first of all, by talking about perhaps the most evil aspect of modern-day bookselling, which we have termed bookjacking.
Bookjacking? What is bookjacking?
Well, here's the deal. A long time ago, Amazon.com gave certain booksellers access to a thing called an API, which means they have access to background data and pricing and seller information about books being sold on Amazon. So what these people have done is they actually go to other sites that also have APIs like half.com or Amazon UK or abebooks.com. And if they see a book for sale over there on one of those sites and it's not being sold on Amazon, what they will do is they will take that listing, which I guess they're free to take that data. They don't actually own the book. And they will post that book over on the other site that doesn't currently have the book listed. So what you end up with is, let's say...
it's a hijacked book or information, hijacked information.
It is hijacked information, right? They don't even actually handle the book, these sellers. I don't know if they're people. They might just be robots. So what you end up seeing is you'll see a book for sale on Amazon, for example, and there'll be 20 people selling this book, starting at $60, then $78, and $116, and the next 20 copies go up to $3,000. And it's funny because whenever you see these kind of things, it's always the same 10 to 20 seller names. And you wonder, boy, where are these booksellers? Where are these bookstores? Who has this?
And who are the customers who are paying for and buying those books from them?
At these ridiculously inflated prices, right.
Absolutely.
And then you start snooping around a bit, and you'll go to a site like half.com, you'll say, well, wait a second, this is a scarce book, and I know that because we've handled it once in 10 years, and we haven't seen it otherwise, yet there's 20 copies on Amazon for sale. And then you go to half.com, and you realize some guy is selling it out of his basement for $15. He doesn't know what he has. So all of these other people have inflated the price of this book to make it look like there are 20 copies available on Amazon,
when they don't really have the book.
And this also occurs from Amazon to Abe. For example, if there are sellers on Amazon selling a book that's not on Abe, there are, I think, 5 or 10 of these sellers that hijack the listing from Amazon and put it over on abebooks.com to make it, again, look like not a scarce book, but instead a book that there are 5 or 10 copies of. When really, there's one copy of the book for sale on the open market. It's very, very deceitful, or is the word deceiving?
Both.
It's deceitful and deceiving.
Absolutely. Now, we know who these people are because we do this on a daily basis, but where can somebody go to find out and be able to, an average person, where can they go to identify these creeps? I like to think of them as creeps. Or maybe they're just robots. Maybe they're not going to be offended by that attribution.
Yeah, I don't think they're creeps. I think they're market manipulators and probably software-based. They're machines.
They don't know anything about secondhand books.
Haven't a clue. And by the way, just as another thing, usually the listings say something like thousands of satisfied customers or great condition for a used book may contain markings to text.
Yeah. Okay.
Something ridiculous.
Some generic descriptor, nothing specific.
Yeah. So our point is, you really don't want to buy from these people. If you see one of these sellers selling the book on either Abe or Amazon, don't buy the book there. Do a little research. Go to half.com. go to one of the foreign Amazon sites, just Google it, and you will probably find a very inexpensive copy of that book somewhere being sold by a legitimate bookseller and not a market manipulator.
Yeah, that's great advice. But at Zubel.com, we will post a list of these bookjackers, and then folks can reference the list and nail it down.
Yeah, after you listen to this podcast, go to zubelbooks.com. We are going to have a page dedicated to bookjacking and why you shouldn't really take part in furthering their business model, I guess you call it. It's really manipulation and deceitful, and you're not really helping things by patronizing any of these machines or whatever the heck they are.
We've been using the word bookjacker so frequently throughout the last 5 or 6 years that I thought it was a generic and internationally accepted term.
Oh no! This term was invented in-house here. It may have been our friend Brian that used to work for us, or I don't know where it came from, but I think that we have the exclusive rights to the term bookjacker. I've just Googled it, and there's almost no reference to bookjacking. So I guess, although it's ingrained in us as part of regular vocabulary, it is not in the what is it called? The universal lexicon or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. So if anybody uses the term, they owe us rights because we coined it.
If you're a non-bookjacker and use the term, you can use the term. If you're a bookjacker and use the term, you must send us money.
That's a good policy. Now let's move on to our next installment of Book Hauls. This is the part of the podcast where Tom and I talk about our recent trips around the country and around the world and what kind of adventures we've had and what kind of books we've purchased. Tom, you were in Los Angeles a couple months ago. How did that trip go?
Well, relative to your first installment of Book Hauls, where you had a lot of laughs and good times and fun with those nice people on the East Coast.
A lot of good food.
And good food. This was a struggle, this trip. It was actually more than a few months. It was my last trip to L.A., which was in the fall. And I got a call from a woman. Actually, I got an email from a woman who said that her father had passed on, and he was a book dealer. And he had several thousand books in two locations, in his house in Pasadena and in a storage facility in downtown Los Angeles. So we struck up a conversation through email, and I think I spoke to her on the phone a few times. She actually, I think, lived in Michigan at the time, but we agreed that she would meet me in California. It coincided with, by chance and luck, that I was going to see one of my favorite bands, Phish, at the Hollywood Bowl with a friend of mine. So we arranged to go out there, and I think it was a Monday that we saw the concert. And then Tuesday morning, I drove to downtown Los Angeles to see the books and meet the woman.
Okay, so that's the bad part, the traffic.
The traffic is always the bad part. Yeah, it's hell and misery. The show was actually rather dull. When I got to downtown, actually, on a serious note, downtown Los Angeles is okay. The problem is this particular loft or storage facility was, I think, on Fifth Street or Fifth Avenue or something like that, which is in the heart of a district called Skid Row.
Skid Row, absolutely. That's Fifth Street.
Yeah. I had never seen anything like it in my life. I was shocked. I was devastated. I had never seen so many humans in America living on the street, wandering around in the haze of bad drugs. I think I saw a dead person being carried off a corner by ambulance people one morning. It was really disturbing.
Well, at that point, I would probably hightail it out of there and just write off the trip and give up.
Well, I had to go on. I didn't want to disappoint you or Dad, so I persevered. I went up. I met this woman up on, I think, the fourth floor. I can't recall right now. And it was a large, I think it was a 4-room unit in sort of an apartment building, but they were very large rooms, and probably 70% of the books were in boxes. probably 30,000 books altogether. It looked good. There was a lot of crap, as there usually is, especially when you're dealing with book dealers, because especially book dealers from the old days tended to keep everything they ever came across. So he had bags that you could tell he picked up at some garage sale with just some crap in it, like Popular Mechanics or some encyclopedic volumes. But then he had big boxes of brand new photography books. I say brand new from 20 years ago that had never been opened, or he was really into photography and art.
And were the books arranged in any particular fashion, or were they willy-nilly here and there and just in chaos?
Well, I think in the first room were all of his boxes of books that he'd recently, well, I shouldn't say recently, because I don't think this guy was active in the last 10 or 15 years. His most recent purchases, and they were labeled Cerobi 1992 or whatever,
Remainders fair. Right?
Yeah, so he was really big on buying photographic books, remaindered photographic books and art books. I don't think there was much order. The second room was sort of his shelved stock, and that was in some order. It was all, I recall, by subject, photography or film.
Okay.
And, again, a lot of crap, but some neat stuff.
Did you want to buy the books?
Well, I kind of did. Then I went in the back room, and that was all box and just a mess. It was just things standing on top of other things. And
of course, you can't go through every box.
When there
are 500 boxes or whatever.
Right, and there were at least 500 boxes. I opened a couple of boxes, and I was, here's a photographic periodical, 50 issues of it from 1908 to 1912. Oh, this is kind of interesting. I don't know, here's some first editions from the 60s and jackets in fine condition. Oh, here's an AA book from 1949. So that was in the midst of also crap too. But so I was intrigued.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We had a little discussion, she and I. She was the daughter again, and I said, "Well, what do you want for the books?" And she said, "Well, my father told me to get no less than this amount of money." And I said, "Well, okay, that's kind of where I was. That was roughly where I was thinking." So she said, "All right, well, let's go look at the books at the house in Pasadena." I'm like, "Well, that's great." So we walked through the massive inhumanity to get back to our cars, and drove to Pasadena to a very nice house. And his house was loaded with more art and photography books. Wow. Really, really nice stuff.
Okay, I like this trip so far.
Yeah. Oh, actually, it sounds good so far. Right. And the husband was there. I'm sorry, the wife. The ex-wife of the husband, or I don't know if she was widowed or divorced or something, she was there. The woman's mother was there. So I looked at the books in the house, and they weren't ready to move on those yet. So we had a little negotiation. We all sat on the couch, and we actually quickly arrived at a figure, which was nice.
Good.
And that was on a Tuesday. And I said, "All right, well, I'll buy those books." I didn't buy the books at the house. I said, "I'll have those books out of downtown on Thursday, by Thursday afternoon." Yeah, I could do that, sure.
So you think there were 20 to 30,000 books in the warehouse on Skid Row?
Yeah, on the fourth floor of this place.
You could have hired the locals to help you out moving them out of there, right?
I could have, and I did.
Oh.
Yeah, because my friend, the doctor who I stay with, I mean, he's got a little back issue, although he's a great helper and good for moral support. We needed a little extra help, the two of us. So after we agreed to that deal, I went back to Chris's apartment where I stay, and I almost broke down and cried because I realized I think I overpromised, and I just spent a ton of money also. And I was a little unsure how to put the whole logistics side of it together.
Was there an elevator in the building?
There was a freight elevator about 75 feet from the doorway of the facility, of the book area.
Well, we move boxes out of warehouses and apartments all the time. Where did the trouble arise?
Well, first of all, you have to get pallets, and I figured we probably needed 30 pallets. So, we put our sister on the task of finding pallets in Los Angeles, which finding anything in Los Angeles is very difficult. It's not like Cleveland or somewhere where there's pallet guys everywhere.